Hey everyone, I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center here on 57th Street in New York City. These are feeds from all of our stations and affiliates around the country. If there is news happening there, we're going to bring it to you here. But right here in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted on federal charges, and soon the attorneys from the Southern District of New York are expected to hold a press conference where we hope to learn more about those charges. The indictment is currently sealed, but we do know it comes after Mayor Adams and several members of his administration were targeted in federal corruption investigations. CBS News New York reporter Natalie Duddridge is covering the story. She's been outside in front of that mansion since this morning. So Natalie, break it down for us. What are we learning about the possible charges?
Well, Vlad, first off, what a morning it has been. And I want to begin with the activity here at Gracie Mansion, the mayor's residence. I'll show you what's going on, and then we'll break down all of those details. We are keeping a close watch because just moments ago, 5 vehicles left the residence here, SUVs with tinted windows, people wearing face masks inside. They have been in and out of the residence here. You see there photographers, media keeping a close watch. There is a white tent where the mayor's security detail is inside. So again, a lot of action, a lot of activity. So let's break this down. As you mentioned, the indictment remains sealed. At this hour, still unclear what charges New York City Mayor Eric Adams will face. However, we are hearing from sources familiar that they do expect it will be unsealed today. The FBI, other law enforcement were also here this morning, and that is confirmed by the mayor's attorney, Alex Spiro, who said in a statement to us this morning that federal agents appeared this morning at Gracie Mansion in an effort to create a spectacle. Again, that from the mayor's attorney. He says that the mayor has not been arrested and looks forward to his day in court, and added that they sent a dozen agents to pick up a phone when we would have, quote, happily turned it in. So how did this all start? Well, last November, several investigations were launched into the mayor and members of his administration. Federal authorities had been scrutinizing donations to Adams' 2021 mayoral campaign from people connected with the Turkish government. Sources say a new round of subpoenas were delivered to Adams' lawyer in July, seeking information related to dealings with Israel, China, Qatar, South Korea, and Uzbekistan. Mayor Adams released a recorded video message from Gracie Mansion last night, and he said in part, if he's charged with a crime, it will be, quote, entirely false, based on lies. And sources say, Vlad, that he could appear in court as soon as this morning to face these charges.
So, Natalie, we just threw up a graphic earlier that sort of described what federal investigators have been scrutinizing over the last several months, including donations that may have come from foreign governments in exchange for influence. And so this investigation has been ongoing for several months. And we now know, of course, that over the last couple of weeks, several members of the mayor's administration have resigned. What is the mayor saying about his ability to continue to run the city? Because there is pressure from even federal lawmakers, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who represents a district in New York City, for Mayor Adams to resign, in which case the public advocate, Jumaane Williams, would become the acting mayor until he calls for a special election. What are you hearing from the mayor and or members of his administration about his ability to keep the business of New York at the front of what he's doing while he's facing this indictment?
Well, Vlad, that's right. Earlier this week, Mayor Eric Adams said not only would he not resign, but that he plans to seek re-election. And I just keep looking over my shoulder because I can feel activity behind me. So I'm just going to step off frame so I can keep my eye on the residents in case the mayor comes out. Again, we have not yet seen the mayor since this indictment was brought forward. But getting back to your points about what happens next, well, political experts say that Governor Kathy Hochul does have the ability to remove Adams from office. And so there could be pressure on her to do so because the mayor has many positions to fill due to recent resignations and may have a hard time filling them. Again, many investigations ongoing at this time, and we are continuing to watch the comings and goings here at Gracie Mansion. Obviously a very active morning here, Vlad. We'll send it back to you in the newsroom. We're live from the Upper East Side. Natalie Duddridge, CBS News, New York.
Yeah, Natalie, thank you very much for that comprehensive report. Of course, we're going to keep following this story all day long. 400 years of New York City history, folks, including mayors like Jimmy Walker. Google Mayor Jimmy Walker to talk about corrupt mayors, or Tammany Hall. This is the first indictment of a New York City mayor in the 400-year history of this esteemed city. We're going to stay on top of this story all day long. But now to Hurricane Helene. The Category 2 storm is strengthening in the Gulf of Mexico and is expected to reach Florida in just a matter of hours. It's already packing a punch in the southeast with heavy rain. The National Hurricane Center says Florida's coast is in line for catastrophic winds and storm surge. States from Florida to Virginia have all declared a state of emergency. CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez is in Tampa. He is tracking the storm's path. So, Manny, what are the conditions like right now? We can already see that the surge of waves behind you.
That's right. That's the big concern here, the storm surge. We've been watching as the outer bands of the storm have been hitting the Tampa Bay area throughout the morning, and the water is steadily getting higher and higher. You can see how it's lapping up here along the pavement of this park that is adjacent to the bay. 5 to 8 feet of storm surge. That is what is projected for this area. As you can see, some people are still getting around town, but pretty soon the window to do that will close, because that much storm surge will lead to flooding, street flooding, and even flooding possibly of some coastal residential areas. That is why yesterday officials in several counties here ordered mandatory evacuation orders for coastal areas. And just a short time ago, the sheriff over in Pinellas County, next door to us here, said that he was concerned that not enough people were evacuating those areas. Vlad?
So, Manny, what's the latest on the strength of this storm, and what is the state doing in prepping its residents for what could be a catastrophic storm?
Yeah, we have heard from Governor Ron DeSantis saying that they are surging resources to the areas that are expected to be hard hit. So, for example, power crews are getting ahead and trying to deploy to some of the expectedly hard-hit areas like Tallahassee, for example, especially when you think about the tree canopy and it hitting the state capitol potentially still as a hurricane. Even though we're about 200 miles from the expected landfall where the eye would hit, we're still going to feel the impacts here over a wide area. And that's the big story with this storm, that it is so wide that so many places are going to feel some sort of impact, including Georgia and the Carolinas.
All right, Manny Bojorquez reporting from Tampa, Florida. Manny, stay safe. Thank you very much. Let us bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a look at the forecast. Grant, looks really, really scary for those folks out in Florida.
And Vlad, it's at the point now where everyone that was going to be able to prepare needs to be done and hunkered in if you were going to evacuate. Now the evacuations are pretty much at the point where you need to start stopping that and just hang tight and endure the storm. Here's the latest. The center of the storm, a good 345 miles south-southwest of Tampa, Florida. But you see the rain extending all the way north into portions of Georgia. In fact, South and North Carolina dealing with a stalled out frontal boundary that's trapping all of that tropical moisture that's surging north out ahead of this strengthening, and I might add, a rapidly strengthening hurricane. We're still expecting to become at least a Category 3. There's a possibility it strengthens to a Category 4 hurricane before it makes landfall sometime later this evening into the first half of the overnight. We'll still have a Category 1 hurricane as it moves into South Georgia late tonight into early tomorrow morning, dropping a whole lot of rainfall. I mentioned how far away it is from Tampa. Well, that's also how far out those tropical storm force winds extend. This is a massive hurricane, not just in terms of its intensity, but in terms of its size. Those tropical storm force winds will remain at 345 miles, if not larger than that, encompassing a good portion of the Sunshine State. So that's the wind threat, but all of that wind is going to push that water up into the coast, and then you've got the really heavy rainfall on top of it. Surge is an immediate concern, especially up into the Big Bend region, Vlad. Updated surge totals, some places could see up to 20 feet surge, and that's water rushing onto what is normally dry ground. That is a very dangerous situation, and then the threat shifts to the inland flooding. We'll have more about that coming up here in a little bit. But for now, watching the approach of a very strong Hurricane Helene.
All right, Grant, we'll check in with you a little bit later. Thank you very much, my friend. Israel's military is telling its troops to prepare for a possible ground invasion of Lebanon as it continues to strike Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. The latest strikes come as Hezbollah continues to bombard northern Israel with rockets. Our Chris Livesay is following the latest for us from the state of Israel, and he joins me now to talk about it. So Chris, I was talking to our colleague Deborah Pata, who I know is headed to the region in a few days, and I wondered with her what the appetite for both the Israelis and the Lebanese is for an all-out war. Our hope is that there isn't going to be one, but what are you learning from officials on the ground about the fighting at this hour and the potential for it to escalate to something much, much worse?
Hey, Vlad. Well, you know, there's already an escalation at play. And one reason I know this is because there's an app for that. You know, just in the last hour, I've been getting alerts from the Upper Galilee, Northern Golan, Confrontation Line, Upper Galilee. I mean, this has been going on for the last several days now. On the Lebanese side of the border, we're told by the IDF, that's the Israeli military, that there was a targeted strike in the Dahia neighborhood. Once again, that's the same neighborhood where there were those exploding pagers. It's a heavily concentrated Hezbollah area. It's where where Israel took out the leadership of the Hezbollah military last week as well. Just a calamitous week. But like you said, what is that appetite for war actually like? In Israel right now, they're saying that they're prepared for a ground invasion. In fact, we were just at a press conference where the question was posed, you know, how long would this campaign last? And they said they're prepared for something that would be in the terms of months and not weeks.
Wow. All right. Chris Livesay reporting from Tel Aviv for us this morning. Chris, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, back to our big story this morning. We're keeping a close eye on the path of Hurricane Helene. These are live pictures out of Key West, Florida. You can see that already. Look at that storm surge surging over that barrier there in Key West. We're going to bring you the very latest as the storm takes direct aim at the state of Florida. You are streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, let's take you now to Capitol Hill, where the Trump attempted assassination task force is holding a hearing. Yes, that is the actual name of it. Some of the witnesses include first responders from Butler, Pennsylvania. Let's listen.
The shots being fired. Also, please describe those few minutes leading up to shots fired from your vantage point.
For the first two questions, yes, I was aware through radio traffic that there was somebody on the roof and also that he was armed. The first report that there was somebody on the roof came on a different radio channel than the tactical units were operating, which would be PD Ops 3. And that transmission at 18:08 and 20 seconds is somebody's on the roof. At 18:09, I made a phone call to the PSP sergeant in the Secret Service Command Center and relayed the information that there was a suspect on the roof of the AGR building. There was some additional radio traffic from the Butler Township police units. And at 18:11:03 hours on that PD Ops 3 channel, again, not the channel the tactical units were operating, is the Butler Township unit that reports he is armed. I believe he says, I see him, he's laying down, and he has a long gun. So my actions for that, at that point, the gentleman on the roof clearly is a threat, and I radioed to our quick reaction force to deploy them to the AGR complex to begin to address that threat. Prior to me finishing that radio transmission, you can hear the shots being fired through my open microphone.
Okay. You know, I have a problem going back to the actual sighting of Mr. Crooks more than once and way before 11 minutes after 6. I think that one of the things is the panel has heard from different people at different times is of the thousands of people that were on the grounds that day, there is repeatedly.
All right, you are watching a hearing happening right now on Capitol Hill. This is the Trump attempted assassination task force hearing. You were just hearing earlier from Commander Edward Lenz from Butler County Emergency Services. He was describing the moments that he and his team responded to those shots fired. We're going to keep an eye on this hearing. We're going to have a lot more throughout the morning. It's going to continue for the next couple of hours. We'll obviously bring you news as warranted. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Washington today, where he'll meet with lawmakers on Capitol Hill and President Biden at the White House. He's also expected to meet separately with Vice President Kamala Harris. CBS News campaign reporter in Washington covering the campaign for us is Nidia Cavazos, and she joins me now to talk about this. Nidia, good to talk to you. What do we expect out of the meetings today?
Good morning, Vlad. Well, Vice President Harris will be meeting with Zelenskyy today at the White House, and it's important to note that this meeting is going to be separate than the one President Biden is going to be having with Zelenskyy. We can definitely expect a continued plea for support from American, and this comes just ahead as we're 40 days away from the election, and Zelenskyy does face a possibility of a Trump presidency, and so we can expect both Biden and Harris to continue their support and express their support that they've been assisting Ukraine with lately.
Let me ask you about something else, Nidia. The vice president is set to make a visit to the border tomorrow. What do we know about that trip? Where's she going to go? Who's she going to talk to?
Harris will be making a stop in Douglas, Arizona, and this is going to be her first time visiting the U.S.-Mexico border as a presidential candidate, but not necessarily the first time as a vice president. We know that Harris is going to be addressing border issues. She's going to be giving remarks, and this isn't necessarily a campaign rally, but Harris, throughout the past few weeks, as part of her presidential candidate, has pledged that if she were to be given a border bill, bipartisan border bill, to her desk, she would sign it if elected president. And she has been using this to target former President Donald Trump, that he was responsible for doing away with this bill that would have sent the necessary agents and resources to the border. So we can definitely expect that to be part of her remarks, as well as what other resources and how she's going to be contributing to what's been happening at the border.
All right, Nidia, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, let's turn now to CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. She joins us for more on what's happening in Trump world. Caitlin, always great to see you. We've learned that former President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy will not be meeting. Trump is also pointing jabs at Zelenskyy, saying at a rally yesterday that the president has had some criticisms of him. Let's play some of that.
Look at the war in Ukraine, and I think it's something we have to have a quick discussion about, because the president of Ukraine is in our country, and he's making little nasty aspersions toward your favorite president, me. It would have never happened if I were president, to start off with. A deal could have been made if we had a competent president instead of a president that egged it all on. And Biden and Kamala allowed this to happen by feeding Zelenskyy money and munitions like no country has ever seen.
Caitlin, I mean, the comments from the former president seem divorced from reality. The idea, the notion that President Trump and Vice President Harris egged on this war, it sort of belies the truth, which is that Ukraine was invaded by its neighbor, the Russians. And so the notion that the president, who's at the top of the Republican Party ticket, is suggesting that the only reason that he's not supportive of Zelenskyy is because some of the comments that Zelenskyy may have made, criticisms, is not even thinking or talking about the thousands of people who have died in this conflict. So my question, I guess, is would there be anybody on the Republican side to meet with President Zelenskyy to talk about this conflict, talk about a way to end it? There are some Republicans, as you know, who are supportive of Ukraine's efforts to resist Russian aggression, but there are also some, specifically those who support President Trump, who are not.
Yeah, Vlad, what you just described, that context is exactly right. The support within the Republican Party that is supportive of Zelenskyy and the effort to fight back against Russia is increasingly small. And it's notable that Donald Trump, and with the nomination of J.D. Vance, who has been early on criticizing the funding going to Ukraine, that selection was really kind of putting a flag to say that this is kind of the position of this Republican Party ticket. They have been very critical of Zelenskyy, and you heard from the former president's comments there. He's also taking it personally, these comments that Zelenskyy made, saying that Donald Trump essentially doesn't know what he's talking about here, and he says he could have prevented or could stop this war, and that is just not true. What is interesting, though, is that you have leaders on Capitol Hill starting to also side with Trump on this. House Speaker Mike Johnson has called on the Ukrainian ambassador Markova to be fired because Zelenskyy went to a Pennsylvania manufacturing facility this week with Democrats, and Republicans are now calling that election interference. But it is what's notable about this whole story is that the Republican Party ticket, the position has long been against continued funding in Ukraine. Going back to the primaries, just covering the primaries, talking to Republican Party voters, base voters, they were very upset with the amount of money that was going over to Ukraine. So this is reflective of a Republican Party base as well. But as you note, the Mitch McConnells of the world, that is an increasingly small faction within the GOP.
Yeah, I saw that letter that House Speaker Mike Johnson sent to President Zelenskyy, as if people who are in Pennsylvania worried about the price of gas, the price of milk, the price of groceries, the price of raising a child are going to care that the president of Ukraine visited a manufacturing plant in the state, and that's how they're going to vote. It sort of seems sort of far-fetched to me, but what do I know? Caitlin, always great to have you on the show, and you're in New York City. We love that. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, as always.
All right, CBS News will host the only vice presidential debate between Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz this Tuesday in New York. Join us for live coverage of that debate, moderated by our very own Nora O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan. That will start at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS News 24/7 and at 8 p.m. on CBS. All right, back to Hurricane Helene's storm surge, which is flooding coastal roads in Key West. Check out this video that's coming into us right now. The Category 2 hurricane has been growing in size over the last few hours. CBS News Miami reporter Steve Majeri takes us there.
I'm Steve Majeri in Key West. We're hundreds of miles away from the eye of the storm, but we are still feeling some stormy effects from Helene here. The main ones we're feeling are wind and waves. You can see the waves here are washing over onto the street because of these strong winds that are coming towards me, and that's causing water to build up on the street here. This is Roosevelt Boulevard, and even back here into these side streets. Right here, this is one of the city's many drains for storm water, but it's backed up. It's slowly subsiding a little bit more since earlier this morning, and there are some other places for this water to go over here. Back by this hotel, the water also can wash over into that ditch. Better there than building up by people's cars. And officials tell me they do have ways of draining all of this out. They have equipment, but they tell me that often the system just gets overloaded with the waves and all of the storm surge that's coming through the last few days. So the best bet for them is to just wait for all of this to subside. So we're seeing these strong waves coming in here. Anywhere near the water really is where you're going to feel the strongest winds and some waves if you're close enough to the water. The southernmost point had some really strong waves yesterday, likely going to see more of that today, and of course along here on Roosevelt. So cars are starting to move their way through and drive through the area, but officials are urging you to be cautious as you make your way around the island. Reporting in Key West, I'm Steve Majeri.
And we will bring you the very latest on the storm's path. That's coming up next. This CBS News 24/7. Here is a look at some of the top stories we are following for you this morning. A suspect is in custody in Santa Maria, California, after detonating an improvised explosive device inside a courthouse. Multiple people were injured. Police say the 20-year-old suspect was expected to appear in court on a firearms charge. They believe he set off the explosive because of his arrest. And moving over to Kentucky, a local sheriff pleaded not guilty to murdering a judge. Letcher County Sheriff Sean Steins was arraigned virtually yesterday. He's accused of shooting and killing Judge Kevin Mullins inside his courthouse chambers last week. Steins surrendered minutes later. There is no word, folks, yet on a possible motive for the shooting. And get this, Steins could face the death penalty if he is convicted. Let's take you over now to the East Coast. The CDC is reporting a 10th death linked to the Boar's Head meats Listeria outbreak. The multi-state outbreak was connected to a plant in Virginia and led to a nationwide recall of potentially contaminated deli meats. In total, there have been 59 Listeria cases tied to Boar's Head reported in 19 states. And we are tracking Hurricane Helene. The Category 2 storm is expected to slam into Florida's coast. Powerful storm surge is just one major concern as people and businesses brace for impact. That is where we find CBS News correspondent Jason Allen, who's in Crawfordville, Florida, tracking Helene. So, Jason, how is Florida's Big Bend preparing for landfall? And it's terrible for these folks who have been dealing with so much of this weather over the last couple of months. They're now dealing with the landfall of another major storm.
Yeah, good morning, Vlad, and you nailed it. They have gone through so much with the storm just a month ago, another big one a year ago, and here it is again. And to your question, how are they preparing? I think it's fair to say they're not exactly sure how to prepare. The sheriff here in Wakulla County posting just a little bit ago that this area has never in recorded history seen a storm of this magnitude that is focused on the cities, the communities here. So they haven't had to prepare for something exactly like this. Now, you can see the businesses behind me. It's closed up, it's boarded up. They know how to do that in most storms like this. The stores back here are closed. All of these gas pumps here, everything is off. Although, and you may even see this while we're with you in the next minute or two, we have seen a lot of people this morning that have still been pulling in here, looking for gas, looking for supplies, Vlad. Unfortunately, at this hour, even with the storm about 300 miles away, the center of it still, it is really too late to get all those supplies that you need.
So this is just one of three major storms in more than a year for Big Bend. That's what we've been talking about all morning long. What are folks telling you about their ability to handle another one?
They are, Vlad, very nervous about this one, right? They know where some of the high spots are. And so you see where we are, right? It's not super impressive right now. We've got a steady rain, but you don't see floodwaters. But there's the potential for some of these areas right here where we are to be underwater if we get that extreme high category 3, low category 4 type of storm surge. So they're seeking out high spots. We have seen cars, boats that are parked in a few specific places around the area trying to stay above those floodwaters as the storm comes in.
All right, Jason, thank you, my friend. Stay safe out there. We'll check in with you throughout the day. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. You heard there, Grant, not looking good for those folks out in Florida. And I see behind you there, man, that is one ugly hurricane.
It sure is, Vlad. You're not kidding me. This is a massive hurricane. And here's the scary part. It's in the process of rapidly intensifying. Wind speeds up there around 100 miles per hour, but I've been looking at some satellite trends within the last 30 minutes that show we're probably going to get this thing to really ramp up its wind speeds very quickly. Look here, this is a visible satellite. So this is literally what the satellite up in space is viewing when it looks down on top of Hurricane Helene right now. See all those clouds that are really starting to blossom to the north of it? That's the strengthening part of the eye wall around the center of the hurricane, and that's where some of the strongest winds are within this hurricane. Speaking of the strongest winds, those hurricane force winds only extend out about 50 miles from the center of the storm, but the tropical storm force winds, those 39 mile per hour winds and stronger, they extend out a good 345 miles from the center of Helene, meaning all of those winds are pushing the water from the Gulf of Mexico up against the Florida Gulf Coast, up into the Big Bend area. Some of those wind gusts approaching 36 miles per hour in St. Pete. Those wind speeds will really begin to increase up towards Apalachicola and Tallahassee as we go throughout the day. Landfall expected after sunset this evening, between 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock this evening. The forecast shows a Category 3, but somewhere between this afternoon and tomorrow morning, it very well could reach Category 4 strength, which would be wind speeds in excess of 130 miles per hour. It'll then bring a lot of potentially devastating rainfall to portions of the western parts of North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, but most immediately it is that surge with those tropical storm force winds pushing all of that water potentially up to 20 feet above normally dry ground. All that rushing water can cause catastrophic damage right along the immediate coast. But then it's that heavy rainfall as it moves through portions of Georgia. We'll still have a Category 1 hurricane moving through South Georgia as we go throughout the first half of the day tomorrow. Even though the system weakens, still significant impacts across portions of the southeast. It's not just right along the Florida Gulf Coast, but I mentioned that potential for flash flooding and landslides into western North Carolina, Vlad. This is going to be something to watch very closely as this thing continues to intensify as it tracks to the north today.
Yeah, and in addition to you, Grant, we've got reporters all over the Panhandle covering the story for us, so obviously we're going to stay on top of it. Thank you very much, my friend. We'll check in with you a little bit later. Back now to our top story. New York City Mayor Eric Adams indicted on federal charges, and soon attorneys from the Southern District of New York are expected to hold a press conference where we hope to learn more about those charges. Let's dip into our friends over at CBS News New York. They are covering this right now.
Avalanche of calls for Mayor Adams to resign. Many of those voices are coming from within his own political party, including those who are running against him in the Democratic primary next year. Brad Lander, the current city comptroller who is running for mayor, said in part in a statement that Adams deserves due process. However, it is clear that defending himself against serious federal charges will require a significant amount of the time and attention. The most appropriate path forward is for him to step down. Several council members, including Robert Holden, Sandy Nurse, and Tiffany Caban, released similar statements expressing doubt Adams can still run the city. Caban, who called on the mayor to resign a week ago, wrote that he is unable to effectively lead and govern. While he awaits his right to due process, he must resign. State Senator John Liu also chimed in, writing that the people of New York need a mayor who is able to devote full time and full energy to putting the city on the right track, including recruitment and retention of top leadership for the city. Mayor Adams is simply unable to do that for the foreseeable future. Now, hours before news of the indictment came down, House Minority Speaker Hakeem Jeffries spoke up in favor and in support of the mayor, but he has not publicly commented on this situation since then. Reporting live from Lower Manhattan, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
Mayor Bill de Blasio also among those reacting to these reports of an Adams indictment. Here's part of what he had to say last night on CNN.
Of course, shock and concern for our city. And then another is a very strong reminder that innocent until proven guilty is the American way. I do think we have to be really careful here. We haven't seen anything specific. We don't know what this is yet. We haven't heard a defense. If he truly believes he's innocent, he has a right to stand up and say that and keep his job. But he does owe it to New Yorkers to explain how he's going to navigate that reality and provide the leadership we need.
Also this morning, we're learning more about the incoming...
All right, you've been watching our sister network, WCBS New York, covering the indictment of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Let's bring in Anna Schechter. She is the CBS News senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety, and she joins me now from here in New York City. So, Anna, when will we learn more about this indictment? Obviously, the reporting out there is that the feds have been zeroing in on those payments from foreign governments that the mayor is alleged to have accepted in exchange for favors, but we haven't actually seen the actual indictment.
That's exactly right, Vlad. So we are expecting it at about 10:30, so any minute now. We're watching, and we will bring you the line by line and the details. So what we can expect in this indictment is a narrative and a story that the prosecutors will tell that take us through what they say, what they allege Mayor Adams did to curry favors. Specifically, we're looking at the Turkish government. There's been a lot of reporting around that, and we know that last November, the feds took his phone as part of this inquiry. Did he conspire with the Turkish government in order to receive illegal campaign donations when he was running for mayor? And so we've actually looked, our team has found on opensecrets.org thousands of dollars given to him by people close to Erdogan. So we are looking for descriptions of individuals that match those, so we can kind of match the names to who gave the money. We probably won't see these people named in the indictment. Generally, their position is just described, but we will get a fuller picture of what prosecutors allege, a timeline. Generally, they lay out exactly who did what at what time, who was calling, who texting, emailing. So we're looking out for all of those details in the indictment.
Eric Adams, as you know, Anna, is vowing to fight this and stay in office. And I've reminded our audience that this is really remarkable in New York City's 400-year history, where we have had politicians who have been allegedly extremely corrupt, including Mayor Jimmy Walker, and going back to the Tammany Hall days of the 19th century, Fernando Wood. And this is the first time that a mayor of New York City has been indicted by the federal government. So the governor of New York does have a role to play in this if she thinks that the mayor cannot survive or actually carry out his duties for the people of New York City. What is that role?
That's exactly right. Only Governor Hochul can remove him from office, and she would have to jump through a few hoops to do that. But she does have the power, and no one else does. And so far, he's saying he's staying put. He's calling the allegations against him lies, and he is describing himself as a target. And so he's not stepping down anytime soon, if we can believe the recent statements that he made last night.
It is always fascinating to me. It doesn't matter what political party you are from, Anna. Once you are under scrutiny for allegations such as this, everything becomes a witch hunt. Everything becomes rigged. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, independent, or other. Anna Schechter, tracking all the developments for us. Again, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City, indicted by the federal government. We are awaiting the unsealment of those indicting documents, and we'll bring that to you live. Thank you very much, Anna. Let's go back to Hurricane Helene, which has not just yet made landfall, but is already wreaking havoc on airports and prompting airlines to issue travel alerts. Well, the very latest coming up next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Hurricane Helene is looking to be a direct hit on Florida's Big Bend region. Even before making landfall, the system is already causing major travel problems around the country. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve is at Dallas Love Airport and joins me now. Chris, saw your report earlier this morning. What are you seeing in the moment right now?
Well, Vlad, I mean, this is what the radar looks like, and that's a lot of green, red, and yellow if you're trying to fly into the southeast United States, really for the next few days. So that's bad for flyers if you need to try to get anywhere near where this storm is coming in. Areas that we're watching very closely. Obviously, today, Florida is going to be disrupted, even on the far side of Florida. We're talking about Miami because the weather between where the planes need to go in Miami is going to be disrupted. It can basically cause roadblocks on the express lanes that get the planes north and south or across Florida. So that's why you'll see real impacts in Miami and Fort Lauderdale today. The other place we're really watching, Atlanta. You know, they're not going to get the full force of the storm, but this storm could still be at hurricane strength by the time it gets to Atlanta. Atlanta is home to the world's biggest airport, the world's busiest airport, a mega hub for Delta Airlines. That's going to have the potential to cause some real disruptions later today, into tomorrow, and perhaps into the weekend, depending upon how much rain and wind the Atlanta area gets. But we're looking at potential disruptions even as far north as American's hub in Charlotte, North Carolina. From this storm before it sort of bends and parks over Tennessee this weekend. So basically, bottom line here, if you're trying to get to the southeast, the next couple of days are going to be very, very challenging. Looking at about 1,000 cancellations now. That number's been steadily rising throughout this morning. Delays around 1,300. That will continue to rise as well. You know, the airlines have been watching this storm very closely for the last few days. We were in American Airlines Operations Center yesterday as they were poring over the forecasts that were updating every couple of hours and assessing when they needed to make changes. Airlines added flights into Tampa last night, for example, to try to get people out of the way there before the storm came in because they knew they were going to cancel everything today. That airport has suspended operations and closed to the public until the storm moves on. But really, watch Atlanta. That's going to be the barometer for how travel recovery goes. Vlad.
All right, Chris Van Cleve with that news you can use. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate it. And we will have continued coverage of the latest of the storm's path. You are streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, folks, the indictment against New York City Mayor Eric Adams has just been unsealed. CBS News senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety, Anna Schechter, is joining me now to talk about what she's learning. So this indictment is unsealed. Anna, walk us through the charges and how serious they appear to be.
Sure. Well, we are seeing allegations of federal crimes related to receiving illegal campaign contributions through straw donors from foreign entities. So people would pose and say, hey, I'm an American citizen, I'm giving you this money, when actually it was from a foreign government, one of which is Turkey. And then we also see an allegation that the campaign received upwards of $10,000 in public funds that were supposed to go to the government, but actually were diverted to the campaign. So that's another big allegation. Another thing we were expecting, that Turkish officials gave him and his inner circle upgrades on Turkish Airways, flying to France, China, Sri Lanka, India, Hungary, and Turkey itself. So a lot of details of the perks that Adams and his inner circle received from the Turkish government, Turkish officials, or people close to Erdogan, not just the money going to his campaign, although that is probably the most serious charge, but also perks surrounding, lifestyle things like getting a free upgrade of flying first class to foreign countries. So a lot of details, and we are still going through this indictment, but we can probably expect to hear sentencing guidelines shortly. And of course, Adams continues to deny those charges. We're expecting to hear from him any minute now. He's going to be giving a press conference.
Yeah, what's remarkable, Anna, to me, is that the indictment accuses the mayor of this corruption even before his inauguration. They accuse the mayor the federal government accuses the mayor of accepting and seeking illegal campaign contributions to his 2021 mayoral campaign, as well as other things, value from foreign nationals. And it continued throughout his inauguration. The indictment says that he began preparing for his next election by planning on soliciting more illegal contributions and then granting requests from those who had supported his 2021 mayoral campaign.
That's exactly right. And it all boils down to bribery, fraud, and soliciting illegal foreign campaign donations for that 2021 campaign. And then, as you just said, looking ahead to his next run. And he would have been facing, and at this time is facing, a June 2025 race, and it's a competitive one. So you have 4 other Democrats who have already thrown their hat in the ring, who want to take on the role of mayor. So there is so much going on, so much politics, and the U.S. attorney in the Southern District has been working on this case for probably at least a year. And as we know, last November, the head of Adams' campaign fundraising team, her home was raided. Also, the home of his staffer who handled relations with foreign entities. Her home was raided, and back in November, his electronic devices were taken by federal investigators back then. And again, this morning, that's 11 months later, there were upwards of a dozen federal agents who raided Gracie Mansion, according to his lawyer, and again took his phone. His lawyer is saying we would have happily handed that over and that was all for show. Our WCBS cameras were there at Gracie Mansion early this morning at 6 a.m. when those federal investigators showed up at his home. And now we expect to see him down in giving a press conference. We also have a team down in Lower Manhattan, right by the courthouse, where this indictment was unsealed in court this morning, just a few minutes ago.
All right, let's, Anna, just stand by for a moment while we bring in attorney Rebecca Roiphe, who's joining us now to talk a little bit about this. Rebecca, the allegations in this indictment are wide-ranging, and they are very, very, very specific. As Anna mentions, the investigation began over a year ago. And what I find absolutely remarkable is not only what Anna pointed out, which is the fact that the mayor is accused of accepting illegal donations to his campaign and having gifts bestowed upon him, including discounted Turkish airline flights to France, Turkey, China, India, and Hungary. I always thought it was weird, being a born and raised New Yorker, that the New York City mayor was traveling to all of these countries and these cities. Oftentimes he would say, in his role as mayor of New York City, not as just as a vacation, but also this, Rebecca, which the feds accused the mayor of circumventing the city's campaign finance donation limits by funneling large donations through several employees, which we've started to see the fallout of that as people have either resigned or have been caught up in this dragnet of the feds. And it says that the mayor defrauded New York City by illegally using straw donations to reap matching public funds. Describe that word defraud, because I think if you're a New Yorker, you're like, how did this affect me as a New Yorker? The mayor's defrauding me as a citizen of this city?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's what corruption is. Essentially, it's depriving the citizens of New York of the kind of government that they deserve, which is honest services provided and, honest government. And so that is, in fact, a kind of fraud. But yes, as you said, this is like a far-reaching indictment. It covers a great deal of conduct. It's bribery, conspiracy, election contribution fraud, and all of these charges through this what seems like, if they can prove it, a fairly elaborate scheme.
And this has, there is a safety aspect to what the feds are alleging here, Rebecca, which is specifically that the mayor pressured the city's fire department to approve the opening of a new high-rise consulate for Turkey in Midtown Manhattan in time for a visit by the Turkish president. And he did so even though he knew that the building had failed a fire inspection. The indictment says it was his turn to repay the Turkish official, referencing the mayor.
Right. I mean, and this is a perfect example of what we were just talking about. Why is this a fraud? Why does it matter if the citizens of New York are deprived of honest leadership? And the reason why is because this is a public trust. The mayor is a public official who owes a public trust to the people, and this is the kind of way in which that public trust is violated. And by doing so, he puts people at risk or deprives them of what they deserve, which is a mayor who is looking out for their interests rather than taking a segment of the population who has lined his pockets and providing them with whatever it is that those people want at the expense of the citizens of this city.
The other thing I'm curious about, Rebecca, and you can perhaps share with our viewers your perspective on this, is how the mechanisms involved in bringing an indictment, a federal indictment, against a powerful politician like a mayor or any citizen. It strikes me that the feds have a very, very, very good track record and a good conviction rate. They don't just bring frivolous lawsuits the way some small town prosecutor or DA might. When they're going after somebody, the investigation takes quite a bit of time, and we know this investigation has been ongoing for almost a year. And so just describe for us how that happens.
So absolutely, the federal government will initiate an investigation, and that investigation goes on for a very long time. In recent years, the Supreme Court has in fact narrowed the bribery statutes and related statutes having to do with corruption. So you know that if the federal government is going forward, federal investigators and prosecutors are going forward, they have that in mind, which means that they have thought of and addressed these narrow definitions in order to make sure that this particular indictment will survive challenges in the court. And so, in addition to having to develop these facts over a long period of time through subpoenas and through, as you said, the many executed search warrants and seized phones of public officials that we've been hearing about so far, they build the case slowly and they build it up from the lower people involved to those at the very top, like the mayor.
All right, folks, if you are just joining us here at CBS News 24/7, we are expecting New York City Mayor Eric Adams to address reporters, to address the citizens of this city after a federal indictment, which was just unsealed this morning, which alleges that the mayor engaged in bribery and alleges that he engaged in corrupt dealings with governments of other countries, including specifically the government of Turkey. So Mayor Eric Adams is expected to speak any moment now. We've got cameras and had have had cameras in front of Gracie Mansion all morning long. The mayor last night spoke to reporters suggesting that he was being targeted because he was doing the business of New York City. But of course, as you just heard from Rebecca Roife, our attorney and our contributor at CBS News, the federal government, when they bring an indictment, these investigations take quite a bit of time before they are actually, before someone is indicted. And the fact that the mayor of New York City has been indicted, and by the way, folks, it's the first time, and you can fact check me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe it is the first time in New York City's 400-year history that a mayor of New York City has been indicted by the federal government. And we've had some humdingers of mayors in this city over the course of 400 years. So Rebecca Roife is standing by. We also have Anna Schechter, who's also standing by to talk about this. So Anna, you've been going through the indictment. Take us through some of the details that we may have missed in our just earlier discussion.
Sure. Well, there are even photos of the Bentley suite in the St. Regis, Istanbul, that prosecutors say Mayor Adams enjoyed while he was visiting Turkey. And he paid about $600, but it was a value of about $7,000 to stay for a couple of nights in this luxurious place. So a lot of interesting details about these perks. We already talked about the upgrades to, free business class flights to Turkey, France, China, and other countries. Those flights are very expensive. And so that is a perk, and that is seen by the federal government as an illegally accepting this money. So not just dollar amounts that were paid to the campaign, upwards of multiple thousands of dollars in $5,000 increments here and there. We've seen sent from Turkish officials to straw donors who then contributed to the campaign. So it was kind of, I don't want to say elaborate, but it was a well thought out scheme, prosecutors allege, to get those funds to the Adams campaign during his bid for mayor in 2021. And what's interesting is that it looks like the prosecutors were looking at that going back even more than a year. So this is a long time coming. This is something that Damian Williams, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, has been working on for quite some time. Generally, these U.S. attorneys don't bring charges like this until they are ready. They take their time. The first time reporters covering this story, the first time we got a whiff of this was November 2nd of 2023, when the homes were raided of two of his aides who handled campaign finance and dealings with foreign governments, including Turkey. We also know that this prosecutors were looking not just at Turkey, but at other countries, Israel, Uzbekistan, China, so campaign contributions from those countries as well. But Turkey was really the focus of their investigation and their probe, where they were able to obtain these receipts for the hotels, for example, the St. Regis, Istanbul, the receipts for those flights on Turkish Airways, multiple flights going around the world. Sometimes the mayor flying, according to the indictment, on business class flights, and then members of his inner circle also receiving these flights that they didn't pay for. Vlad?
All right. Stand by, folks. Let's bring in CBS News legal contributor Caroline Polisi, who's joining me now with more. Caroline, you and I were earlier this morning on CBS Mornings talking about what could potentially be in this indictment. And as you just heard from Anna there, the indictment is very, very specific, including tracking the mayor's movements in foreign countries, specifically when he stayed, for example, in Istanbul, in Turkey, where he stayed at the St. Regis Hotel there in what is described as the Bentley suite at the St. Regis Hotel. That suite normally costs $7 grand a night. The mayor only paid $600. So when the mayor expresses his innocence, and of course he is innocent until he's proven guilty, but when you have those receipts, it's really, really, really difficult to build a defense.
Yeah, absolutely, Vlad. And what the defense will be here, as we've seen in other cases of bribery for politicians, is that, bribery is a pretty difficult charge to make out. There has to be a very specific quid pro quo, and that is, a tit for tat. And the government will have to prove that the money was made in exchange for a very specific reason. And one of those reasons we see laid out here in the indictment is this sort of fast tracking for the certificate of occupancy for the Turkish government, for this building, this consulate in Midtown Manhattan, that high-rise building, really putting the pressure campaign on the New York City Fire Department to get those clearances, even when perhaps there were some safety concerns. So, I think the defense will be that this is sort of politics as usual. You sort of need to keep people happy. You can do favors for people, as long as it's not, as I said, a specific quid pro quo. But what he's going to have to worry about here is there are other charges here besides bribery. 5 counts here laid out very specifically in a 57-page indictment, some of which are merely accepting illegal campaign contributions from foreign governments like Turkey. Also, I would note there's a pretty devastating allegation that he used straw donations to his campaign and then used the NYC matching program to get over $10 million in illegal campaign contributions. So, this defense of, well, this is politics as usual, isn't going to work for those kinds of charges. So we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, Caroline, just stand by. We're seeing some movement right now. These are live pictures coming into us in New York City, and we have Natalie Dudridge from WCBS New York who's on the ground there. Maybe, Eric, we can get Natalie up to talk to us what is actually happening there. We see some people moving up to oh, here comes the mayor. Here comes Mayor Eric Adams. He's about to make a public statement, folks. Let's bring it to you right now.
You know, this is a youth thing, Eric Adams. This is not a black gang. Your policies are anti-black. You are a disgrace to all black people in this city. The things that you have done are unconscionable. You hurt our schools. Our streets are dirty. Our children are harassed by the police. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You can shush me all you want, but the people are with us. And this is not a black thing. This is a justice thing.
First of all, I want to thank you for being here this morning. And I want to thank the supporters of all ethnic groups that are here, particularly the men and women of the clergy that's here, that have joined me here today. And we are not surprised. We expected this. This is not surprising to us at all. The actions that have unfolded over the last 10 months, the leaks, the commentary, the demonizing, this did not surprise us that we reached this day. And I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgments. In about 30 minutes, you're going to hear a story of the case that is in front of us. This story will come from the federal prosecutors. And I ask to wait and hear our side to this narrative. From here, my attorneys will take care of the case so I can take care of the city. My day-to-day will not change. I will continue to do the job for 8.3 million New Yorkers that I was elected to do. And the 300,000 plus employees of our city government will continue to do their jobs, because this is what we do as New Yorkers. It's an insult to the hardworking people of the city that anyone would say that they won't do their jobs while this case proceeds in the background. They are dedicated public servants, and I have been one of them for many years, and they're going to continue to do their job, moving the city forward every day. It's an unfortunate day, and it's a painful day. But inside of all of that, it's a day when we will finally reveal why for 10 months I have gone through this. And I look forward to defending myself and defending the people of this city as I've done throughout my entire professional career. That's right. I want to now turn it over to the person who started me on this journey, Reverend Herbert Daughtry.
Amen. 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 Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You are our mayor, and will be to time come, still will be our mayor to all the supporters. Irrespective of what people say, he's still our mayor. Amen. As he has indicated, we started on a journey a long time ago. I encouraged him to join the police department. He did, and you know the rest of the story. So, you know, Mr. Mayor, Eric, it's one more battle we have to fight. That's right. There's one more battle we have to fight. And we're not about to quit. We're not about to give up. We'll be there. We'll be there to the end. God bless you. God be with you. We're going to win this fight.
And so, let me get an umbrella, put it on the device so the water won't get inside there, Robbie. Wait, hold on one moment. Hold on. You know we don't do this calling out stuff at my press conferences. When we finish speaking, we will respond to a few questions. We just want to cover that. Are you good, Robbie? I affectionately call her Mother Dukes. Has been a head of the NAACP and just a leader that has mentored me throughout my entire journey. I want to now call up Mother Hazel Dukes.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Hazel Dukes. I live in Harlem. I'm 90. Would you be quiet? Would you shut up? I'm 92 years of age. I've known this young man for over 40 years. I come with a heavy heart today, but my head is not unbowed. He's going to have his day in court, and we're going to stand by him. We came this morning to pray for him, because prayer changed things. I am asking all New Yorkers to hear his side, to let him have a day in court. Let him have his day in court, and then we can make our decisions. But we are not here today to criticize the federal government where you might be, but shush. That's all you do. That's all you brought here to criticize. Yeah. We are going to be here. We're going to be here.
I'm sorry, Mother Duke. Hey, brother, this is a 92-year-old elder. Show us some respect. A 92-year-old elder.
She stands next to you. She stands next to Cuomo. As the NAACP, as the 501c3, you should not be standing for a political candidate. Stop that. You're always in favor. You are always in favor of the power.
Go ahead, Mother Duke.
Don't respond to them.
Go ahead, Mother Duke.
We are calling on all New Yorkers to listen carefully, not to the loudmouths, but listen to facts and figures. His lawyers will go and do our work for us, and we will stand with this mayor. Right.
Thank you. We want to now bring one of our amazing bishops up forward now. Bishop.
An incredibly surreal moment happening right now at Gracie Mansion right here in New York City. The Gracie Mansion being the residence of the mayor of New York. There you see the mayor surrounded by supporters, including members of the clergy, and sounds like a lot of protesters as the mayor steps up to that podium to what we expect would be an address of this federal indictment. The federal indictment that charges the mayor of New York City with bribery and fraud. This is the first time that a New York City mayor has been indicted under such circumstances by the federal government in its nearly 400-year history. I say surreal because the mayor is seemingly putting up these folks who are supportive of him without actually addressing the charges that the federal government is indicted him with. So we're keeping an eye on that when he actually does take some questions from members of the press or he actually speaks to the charges. We'll bring that to you live.